there are two kinds of broad exports, right? One is, say, business to business, B2B. If it's B2B, then the margins typically, and we're speaking to some leading lights of India Inc. who made this point, that the margins typically in B2B exports are thinner, and therefore the ability to absorb the extra tariffs are lesser because it's extremely competitive. But if you have, say, some kind of B2C, business to consumer exports, which are directly to the consumer, there the prospects of being able to increase the price at which you sell might be higher because you've got some flexibility there because you're selling directly to the consumer, and especially if your brands have some salience. But if you're in the B2B sector, then it really squeezes your margins even further, and the ability to increase prices is not that flexible. Arun Sharma, what are you hearing about conversations between Lutnick, the US Commerce Secretary, our Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal, the US Trade Representative, our commerce officials, in terms of trying to get the bilateral trade agreement done before fall? Is that likely to happen? And if it does, how might that impact the tariffs that Trump announced last night?
Well, thank you for the opportunity, Rahul. There is one good, I would say, omen for India that Mr. Lutnick is serious about the discussions. The fact that he participated, I guess, in your conclave, a few weeks ago, the fact that President Trump went out of his way to reiterate his friendship with Prime Minister Modi, the fact that India is one of the few bright spots in terms of friendly relations the United States has with large countries, I think all augur well. But there is also the reality of national interest. The Commerce Ministry came out this morning saying that we are analyzing this 27, and they also gave a very important signal that we should not ignore. They said it is a mixed bag, not a setback. I think we have to read a very positive and I would say promising message there that clearly the backline conversations are not catastrophic by any means, and certainly not of the attitude and the reaction that the closest allies of the United States have had with this. Prime Minister Carney said, look, we are going to take forceful and decisive countermeasures. Australia said this is not an act of a friend. Multiple other countries and close allies of the United States have come back with very strong reactions. India has not. And I think that is probably a pretty good signal to us who are not involved in the direct conversations on taking a more positive view on how these progress towards a bilateral trade agreement will evolve. The other thing that's, I think, important to analyze is that there is a different level of tariff in different sectors, that what we call the tariff gap between the difference between what our certain sectors face already versus what they will now face. And I think that's something that also gives some positive indication. And what really matters is which are the sectors that are high export and which are low. For example, Prime Minister Modi was very smart, in my view, in saying, fine, we'll reduce the road duty on Harley motorcycles. How many Harleys are bought by India? So what impact does that make on an overall basis? So I think it's very important also to get a little micro into the analysis as to how much are we exporting to India in which sector, and what is the exact tariff gap that's going to be impacting when the new tariffs take place.
PM Vijay, there was a sense or there was a hope in some sectors that because of the equation between Prime Minister Modi and American President Trump, that India would somehow be able to avoid these tariffs. Also because India was moving with speed, already reducing some taxes during the budget, signaling that it was willing to reduce more. We were hoping at one level to stave off. The more realistic people in government knew that that's not going to happen, but there was an expectation that we may be able to stave off these taxes. That hasn't happened. Do you see that as being a setback to those who are trying to ensure that India would be exempted from Trump's tariffs?
No, I think that was an unrealistic expectation. I'm not at all surprised that India was not expected. There was no way in which, a president who has made this an article of faith in his policy and his approach, where he has imposed tariffs on his closest allies like Canada, Mexico, who are part of NAFTA, and he's torn up that agreement. So he was not going to make that change just for the sake of goodwill alone. There is a strategic relationship, and where the exemptions are needed for the United States, he has made them. Pharma is a big example. He cannot afford to increase the prices of essential drugs in the United States. it's a political suicide. We're not going to do that. Similarly, critical minerals. I mean, you cannot afford this, tech industry to collapse because of the lack of critical minerals. So where the exemptions had to be made, they've already been made. I think now it's a question of really where do we go from here, and that's going to be a line by line hard negotiation between Secretary Lutnick and team and the USTR and the Indian Commerce Ministry as we go forward. So I guess we all have to stay tuned.